My boss took my multi-million-dollar bonus and handed it to his useless relative. So I did the unthinkable. I stepped back and watched the entire deal collapse. I'd spent 6 brutal months carrying that project on my back. When the bonus finally came through, it was a full 6 figures, and my boss turned around and handed it out in my name to a relative of his who couldn't do a damn thing. Right in front of the entire company, he praised that nepotism hire for her outstanding ability, then criticized me for lacking big-picture thinking and only knowing how to bury myself in trivial, thankless work. I laughed on the spot. Later, when the client's final payment kept getting delayed, he panicked and came begging me to step in and fix it. I looked at his face, twisted with anxiety, and replied calmly, "Sorry, that client isn't under my responsibility anymore." 01. The night of the annual company party, the air was thick with the greasy mix of cheap perfume and buffet food. Our boss, Gregory Hale, stood on stage with his trademark beer belly pushed forward, face flushed with excitement, holding a thick red envelope in his hand. This year's record-breaking performance wouldn't have been possible without everyone's hard work. Gregory boomed into the microphone. The amplified sound made my ears ring. My heart pounded in sync with the thickness of that envelope. I knew exactly what was inside. That money was mine. For the Horizon Development Project, I'd worked overtime for 3 straight months, practically living in the office. I hadn't even gone home when my mom had surgery. The day the contract was signed, Gregory had clapped me on the shoulder and promised, personally, that not a single dollar of the project bonus would be missing. Then came the next sentence, like a bucket of ice water poured from my head to my toes. I'd especially like to recognize Chloe Bennett. Gregory swept his arm out, pointing at a woman in the audience dressed head to toe in designer labels, her makeup flawless. Chloe, his partner's distant niece. She'd been at the company for barely 2 months and still had to ask me how to use the printer. Even though Chloe hasn't been here long, she has vision and drive. She played a key role in securing our partnership with Horizon Development. This bonus is the company's recognition of her abilities. My head buzzed, then went completely blank. Chloe swayed her way onto the stage, took the red envelope, my envelope, from Gregory's hands, and spoke into the mic in that sickly sweet voice of hers. "Thank you, Gregory, for believing in me. Thanks to everyone for helping me, especially Lila, who taught me so many basics." Basics? Sure, like how to turn a computer on and off. Thunderous applause filled the room. My coworkers' eyes were full of pity, schadenfreude, and emotions I didn't even want to name, stabbing into me like needles. My face burned, but my hands and feet felt ice cold, like they'd just come out of a freezer. I dug my nails deep into my palms, the sharp pain barely keeping me from completely losing it. But the most disgusting part was still to come. Gregory cleared his throat and fixed his gaze on me. "Lila Brooks, why don't you stand up and say a few words? As a senior employee, share how you supported the new hire and helped Chloe grow so quickly. That kind of selfless, behind-the-scenes dedication is exactly what this company needs." Every eye in the room snapped toward me. I could feel the suffocating tension in the air, the anticipation of a good show. Gregory's lips curled into that greasy smile, the look of someone exerting absolute control. He wanted me to admit, in front of everyone, that my work had been stolen, and then thank them for it. I stood up slowly, every bone in my body protesting. I looked at Gregory on stage, at Chloe smiling brightly beside him, at the glaring red envelope in her hands. I took a deep breath, but the oily stench in the air made my stomach churn. Forcing a smile uglier than tears, I said, slowly and clearly, "Gregory's right. I really did learn a lot. I learned how to see the bigger picture." In that moment, a voice inside me said, "Lila, that's enough. More than enough." 2. That night, after the party ended, I went back alone to my tiny 430-square-foot apartment in Brooklyn. I didn't turn on the lights. By the dim glow of the street lamp outside, I brewed myself a cup of tea. The leaves were cheap, something my dad had mailed from back home. The taste was bitter. That bitterness spread from my tongue straight into my heart. Scenes from the past 6 months replayed in my head like a movie. Morgan from Horizon Development was notorious in the industry, difficult, demanding, and endlessly indecisive. His technical requirements were harsh and vague, his cooperation terms constantly shifting. No one in the company wanted to touch that ticking time bomb. Gregory came to me, painting visions and making promises, saying that if I closed the deal, I'd be the company's biggest contributor. To crack that hard nut, I pulled out my old work notebook, edges frayed, stained with coffee, and filled half of it again. I studied every past Horizon bid, analyzed Morgan's personal preferences, pulled countless all-nighters, and drafted 5 completely different technical proposals. Once, while waiting for a last-minute meeting confirmation from Morgan, I sat in a cafe under their office building from 9 a.m. until 11 p.m. It poured all day. I hadn't brought an umbrella. I was soaked to the bone by the time I got home and came down with a high fever the next day. I didn't dare take sick leave. I went for IV fluids during the day, then went straight back to the office at night to revise the proposal. That was when Chloe joined the company. Every day she strutted around the office in high heels, drenched in heavy perfume. The only thing she ever did related to this project was tag along to one meeting, because Gregory told her to observe and learn while I met with Morgan. She spent the entire meeting scrolling on her phone. When it ended, Morgan politely asked who she was. She lifted her chin and said, "I'm Gregory's niece." That single sentence somehow turned in Gregory's mouth into, Chloe used her social skills to successfully strengthen the client relationship. Absolutely ridiculous. The day the contract was finally signed, I was so exhausted I could barely stand, but I felt a satisfaction I'd never known before. I thought all my effort had finally paid off. Reality slapped me hard across the face. Sitting alone in the dark, the tea in my hand long gone cold, the bitterness only grew stronger. I suddenly found it laughable. I'd been like a blindfolded donkey walking in circles, thinking that as long as I kept moving forward, I'd reach my goal, never realizing I was going nowhere, while the owner could take my feed at any moment and give it to a more favored pet. My fingers traced absent-minded red lines along my arm. I wasn't wrong for wanting to flip the table that night, or for wanting to hand in my resignation the very next day and walk away. But why should I? Why should the results I nearly worked myself to death for become someone else's reward? Why should I swallow all that humiliation and be the one to leave quietly while they walked away smug and triumphant? No, I wasn't leaving like that. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts. I'd been thinking about quitting for a while. I'd interviewed with several companies, including one of our competitors. They'd offered a solid role and an even better salary. I turned it down because the Horizon project wasn't finished yet. I wanted to see things through. Now, I had no more reservations. I sent a short direct message to their HR manager asking whether the position was still open. Then I turned on my laptop and created a new document. Title, Work Transition Log. Gregory? Chloe, you like big picture thinking, don't you? You think technical details are just trivial tasks, right? Then let me show you what happens when those trivial tasks pile up into a mountain and see how you plan to deal with it. You started this show, but the ending? That's mine to write. 03. Early the next morning, I showed up at the office right on time, just like always. When my coworkers saw me, their eyes darted away. They probably felt awkward or simply didn't know how to face me. On Chloe's desk sat a massive bouquet of flowers. The card read, "Congratulations to Chloe on her outstanding achievement. Signed, Gregory." She was holding up her phone, snapping photos from every possible angle, clearly getting ready to post them on social media. When she saw me walking over, a flicker of unease crossed her face, but it vanished almost instantly, replaced by that innocent, sugary smile. "Morning, Lila," she said sweetly. I smiled back, brighter than hers. "Morning, Chloe. Congrats. You totally stole the spotlight last night." Oh, and Gregory's right. I really should learn from you how to focus on the big picture. My attitude clearly caught her off guard. She froze for a second, then stammered, "No, not at all. You're too kind. I still have so much to learn from you." Perfect then. I smoothly pulled out a thick stack of documents from my drawer and dropped them onto her desk with a heavy thud. The Horizon development project may be signed, but there's still system deployment, technical integration, and, most importantly, the final acceptance review and collection of the remaining payment. There's a lot left to do. Gregory said you're the project lead now, so naturally, all follow-up work should be driven by you. I'll just assist. That stack of documents had been carefully prepared by me on purpose, packed with dense technical parameters, code architecture diagrams, and complicated client communication logs. Forget Chloe. Even a seasoned engineer would need at least a couple of weeks to fully digest it. Chloe's face drained of color immediately. She flipped through a few pages in a panic. The charts and jargon she couldn't understand wiped the smug pride right out of her eyes, replacing it with pure confusion and fear. "See this much?" Her voice trembled. "Yeah," I shrugged casually. "That's why I said you handle the big picture, and I'll deal with these trivial details. But since the company wants to groom you, you really need to understand this stuff. Otherwise, how will you talk to the client's technical director? How will you give requirements to our engineers? Don't worry, if there's anything you don't understand, just ask me." I said it kindly, but I knew she wouldn't even know where to begin. Gregory walked out of his office just in time to see the scene. He nodded in satisfaction, probably convinced that I'd been completely tamed. He came over and spoke in that patronizing elder tone he loved to use. "Lila, this is a very good attitude. Chloe's new. You need to guide her more. A team's most important value is unity." I lowered my head obediently. "Understood, Gregory. I'll make sure to hand over all my work to Chloe, without holding anything back." I deliberately stressed the words handover. From that day on, I truly began my so-called work transition. I sent Chloe every single document related to the Horizon development project, hundreds of emails, dozens of meeting summaries. I put her in charge of tracking every stage of system deployment. But every time she came to me with a specific question, I'd respond with an even more complex, highly technical chain of questions to guide her thinking. "Chloe, have you considered the underlying logic of this issue? Could it create coupling with the A module we discussed yesterday? Did you review Section 7 of Chapter 3 in the interface protocol Horizon sent over?" After a few rounds of that, the way Chloe looked at me was like I was some kind of monster. She stopped daring to ask me questions. Instead, she tried handling communication with the engineers and the client on her own. The result was exactly what you'd expect. Total chaos, mistakes everywhere. And me? I watched coldly from the sidelines. On my desk, the document titled Work Transition Log kept growing longer. Every stupid question Chloe asked, every wrong instruction she gave, every unprofessional email she sent, I took screenshots of them all and quietly saved them. They were all evidence. Evidence for the day this would finally go to trial. 04. At lunchtime, I deliberately avoided the crowd and went alone to a quiet noodle place downstairs from the office. I had just sat down when a familiar figure walked over with a tray and took the seat across from me. It was Donna from finance. Donna had been with the company for over a decade. She wasn't talkative, but she understood things more clearly than anyone else. She usually kept her distance, watching everything with cool detachment. "You holding up?" she asked lightly, picking up some pickled vegetables with her chopsticks. I nodded without saying much. "Gregory," Donna said slowly while chewing her noodles, "calculates everything down to the last cent. It's not that he doesn't know you were wronged. He just knows someone like you won't make a scene." I gave a bitter smile. "Maybe." But Donna lowered her voice. "Things haven't been going so smoothly for him lately." I looked up at her, surprised. She took a sip of soup and continued. "Headquarters issued a hard requirement. This quarter's collection rate has to hit at least 95%. If not, his annual evaluation will be marked unsatisfactory. You know what that means. His regional director position might not survive the year." My heart skipped. "The largest outstanding payment we have right now," Donna said calmly, locking eyes with me, "is the one from Horizon Development, and it's the most critical. If that money doesn't come in, his performance numbers will have a massive hole in them." She paused. "What's the payment condition written in that contract?" I took a deep breath. "After system launch, 1 month of stable operation, and receipt of the client's final acceptance certification. Donna nodded and said nothing more, only giving me a long, knowing look. I understood exactly what she meant. That meal tasted unusually good. The information Donna had casually dropped felt like a shot of adrenaline. My previously vague plan snapped into sharp focus. Gregory, you want your position? You want your numbers. And I'm going to pull the rug out from under you right at the most critical point. That afternoon, I got a call from the HR manager at the competitor company. They warmly invited me in next week for a final interview. I accepted without hesitation. After hanging up, I glanced at my computer screen. Chloe had just posted a message in the workgroup chat. The Horizon development system has completed initial deployment and will enter trial operation next week. Let's keep it up. Gregory was the first to respond with a thumbs up emoji. I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth before I even realized it. The show was about to begin. I knew every critical node in that system. I also knew exactly where things were most likely to go wrong, especially in the hands of a client like Morgan, who loved to figure things out himself. There was a diagnostic tool I'd built into the system, originally meant for remote troubleshooting, a so-called backdoor, though not the destructive kind. It couldn't damage anything. What it could do was function like a black box, quietly recording every improper operation. And in the entire company, I was the only one who knew how to read it. Chloe, if you can't even find the door, how could you possibly know what's hidden inside the room? Luther's course. Over the next week, the atmosphere in the office grew increasingly strange. Chloe became the public face of the Horizon Development Project. Every day, perfectly made up and clicking around in high heels, she bounced between the break room and Gregory's office, reporting her vague, inflated progress. Morgan said our system interface looks great today. Horizon says the trial run is going smoothly, no major issues. I saw it all. I heard it all, and I said nothing. I simply added another line to my private work transition log. Chloe mistakes polite client remarks for positive project indicators, lacks risk awareness. I knew this kind of calm was never peaceful. It was the calm before the storm. Morgan's side really had gone quiet for a few days, but I knew him too well. Unless he squeezed every clause in the contract for maximum leverage, he would never pay easily. His no major issues really meant, I haven't found the problem that will make you bleed yet. Chloe, however, clearly took the silence as her own success. She started throwing her weight around the office, issuing instructions, assigning tasks. Once, she even brought a technical report written by one of the engineers to my desk, pointed at a graph, and said, Lila, don't you think this curve looks a bit too flat? Tell them to adjust it, make it steeper. It'll look more impactful. I nearly laughed out loud. That report was a system stability stress test. The flatter the curve, the more stable the system. She wanted it steeper. Holding back my laughter, I replied seriously, Chloe, that's a very bold and creative idea. But technical matters are best left to professionals. You just focus on the big picture. Sure enough, she immediately put on that smug expression that said, figures. Tech people always think small, swayed her hips, and walked away. I watched as she steered a ship I'd built with blood and sweat straight toward waters where I already knew there were icebergs. Meanwhile, I was quietly making my own preparations. The interview with the competitor went exceptionally well. They were impressed by how I'd handled the Horizon development project and offered me the position on the spot, one level higher than my current role with a 50% salary increase. I carefully placed the offer letter, stamped and official, into my bag. It felt like a talisman, solid, reassuring, unshakable. In my mind, I began counting down. My resignation letter was already written, saved neatly on my desktop. In it, I didn't mention a single grievance. I stated my decision calmly and plainly. I didn't need to accuse them of anything. Very soon, reality itself would say everything I ever wanted to and slap them in the face with it. 06. Friday, 4 p.m. There was still an hour left before the end of the workday, but everyone in the office was already a little distracted, packing up, making weekend plans. Then a new email popped up in my corporate inbox. From Horizon Development, Morgan. To Gregory, Chloe, Cece, all project-related staff, including me. The subject line, in bold red letters, read, "Urgent notice regarding major system failure causing serious disruption to our operations." The office fell silent in an instant. The usual hum of chatter disappeared, leaving only the tapping of keyboards and clicking of mice, as if someone had hit the mute button. I could feel people's eyes drifting, intentionally or not, toward Chloe and me. I opened the email and scanned it quickly. Morgan's wording was extremely harsh. He claimed that during their final stress testing, our system had suffered a catastrophic failure, resulting in partial data loss on their end. Due to the severity of the incident, Horizon Development would be suspending the final acceptance process indefinitely and reserved the right to pursue financial compensation and legal responsibility. At the end of the email was a screenshot of a system error, an entire screen filled with glaring red error codes. I looked at that screenshot, completely unfazed. Those error codes were all too familiar. That wasn't a system crash at all. It was the result of someone running tens of thousands of high-intensity concurrent requests in a very short time, using non-compliant methods, triggering the system's self-protection protocol, and locking it down automatically. A textbook case of user error. And the proof of that was the diagnostic tool I'd left inside the system. It could clearly reconstruct exactly which IP address, using what methods, had attacked the system before the so-called crash. I raised my head and looked at Chloe. Her face was paper white. The hand gripping her mouse was shaking uncontrollably. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. The door to Gregory's office burst open with a bang. Phone in hand, face dark with fury, he stormed out and marched straight to Chloe's desk. His voice boomed so loudly the entire floor could hear it. "Chloe, what the hell is going on? Didn't you say everything was going smoothly? A major failure? Huh?" Chloe burst into tears on the spot. I don't know, babe. Morgan said just a few days ago that everything was fine." "Fine?" Gregory was shaking with rage, pointing straight at her face. "That was polite talk. Can't you tell the difference? If this project falls apart, do you have any idea how much money the company will lose? Do you know what that'll do to me?" All around us, coworkers kept their heads down, pretending to be busy, but every ear was wide open. After unleashing his anger, Gregory seemed to realize that exploding in the middle of the office wouldn't fix anything. He took a few deep breaths, forcing himself to calm down. Then his gaze cut through the crowd and landed on me. In that moment, his eyes were filled with urgency, command, and a trace of something else. Pleading. I knew it. My moment had finally arrived. 07. Gregory's stare hooked onto me and dragged me out of the crowd. He waved me over, his tone stiff, the old arrogance gone. "Lila, come here." I stood up slowly, straightened my clothes, and walked over at my own pace. Chloe was still sobbing softly beside us, her makeup completely ruined, looking utterly pathetic. Gregory pulled me aside and lowered his voice, speaking in a tone that allowed no refusal. "Lila, you know this project better than anyone. Right now, immediately, you need to call Morgan and explain everything clearly. Then take the engineers and go over to Horizon Development and fix the system for me." He paused, then added, as if sweetening the deal, "I'll make it up to you. This quarter's bonus, double." Double? So now he remembered my bonus. Funny timing. I looked at his face, twisted with anxiety, and felt absolutely nothing. If anything, I found it almost amusing. He really thought money could fix everything. Really thought I was still the same easy target he could squeeze whenever he wanted. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I glanced at Chloe, still wiping away tears, then slowly turned my gaze back to Gregory and spoke, calmly, one word at a time. "Gregory, did you forget?" My voice wasn't loud, but it was crystal clear. Clear enough for every coworker pretending not to listen to hear every word. "At the annual party, you said it yourself. The Horizon Development project was led by Chloe. She secured it with her big-picture thinking and social skills. The bonus was recognition of her abilities." I paused, watching Gregory's face visibly darken. "You also lectured me, said I only knew how to handle trivial tasks, that my perspective was too small." You told me to learn from Chloe, to be the supporting role, to assist properly. The office was deathly quiet. Even Chloe's crying stopped. Everyone held their breath, watching the climax of the year's drama. I met Gregory's gaze, so furious it looked ready to burst into flames, and spoke as calmly as if this had nothing to do with me at all. So Gregory, now that there's a problem with the project, it should naturally be handled by the project lead, Chloe. She's the star. I'm just the supporting role. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to step in? That wouldn't align with the big picture thinking you emphasized, would it? And besides, I took out my phone and opened the document I'd prepared long ago, the one recording all of Chloe's blunders, holding it up in front of him. I've been handing over my work to Chloe without holding anything back. All project information and technical details have already been transferred to her. From a procedural standpoint, this client is no longer under my responsibility. Sorry, I can't help. By the time I finished that last sentence, Gregory's face had gone from dark green to a purplish red. He pointed at me, his lips trembling, unable to even get a single "you" out. In the end, Gregory got nothing out of me. Fuming and out of options, he dumped all his anger onto Chloe instead. Crying again! All you ever do is cry. What good is that? He pointed straight at her face, practically roaring. I don't care what you have to do. Today, you will calm Morgan down for me. If you can't, pack your things and get out. Chloe was so stunned by the yelling that she could only nod mechanically. Sniffling, hands shaking, she picked up her phone and called Morgan. I went back to my desk and began packing my things, slowly, calmly. My old, worn work notebook, a few healthy potted plants, and the thermos that had kept me going through countless late nights. Chloe's call was clearly going badly. I couldn't hear the details, but I could see her bowing and nodding nonstop, repeating, "I'm sorry, and we'll fix it right away." Her explanations were weak, because she didn't even know what the problem was. When she finally hung up, she turned to Gregory, her face crumpled. Morgan said unless the person who knows the system best comes in person and gives him an explanation, there's nothing to talk about. He also said sending someone who doesn't understand anything to deal with him is an insult. That phrase, someone who doesn't understand anything, landed like 4 sharp slaps across both Chloe's and Gregory's faces. Gregory's expression went beyond ugly. It was a sickly gray mix of rage, despair, and humiliation. He looked at me again. This time there was no command in his eyes, only naked desperation. He strode over to my desk, his voice noticeably softer, almost pleading. Lila, I'm asking you, just this once, help the company get through this. After this, the company will never treat you badly again. I stopped packing and looked up at him calmly. Gregory, I said evenly, do you know my mom had surgery a while back? Because of this project, I couldn't go home to be with her. When I asked for time off, you said the project was at a critical stage and needed me, that I should think about the bigger picture. Gregory froze. I believed you. I thought my effort really mattered to the company. But at the annual party, I finally understood. Everything I did was worth less than Chloe saying, I'm Gregory's niece. And now you're asking me to help the company through a crisis? I gave a small, cold smile. Sorry. My heart went cold that night at the party. This crisis is something you created with your own hands. If you had the nerve to hand credit to someone useless, then you should also have the ability to bear every consequence that comes with that choice. With that, I didn't look at him again. I pulled the resignation letter I'd prepared long ago from my drawer, stood up, and walked straight toward the HR office. The entire office was silent. Everyone stared at my back with a mix of shock and admiration. I could feel Gregory's gaze digging into me like a blade, but I never once turned around. 09. The resignation process went unexpectedly smoothly. The HR manager had clearly heard what was happening outside. She asked no questions and handled everything strictly by the book. When I walked out of the office carrying my box, the chaos was still unfolding. Gregory was completely out of ideas. He had the technical director and several engineers in an emergency meeting, studying the error screenshot Morgan had sent. Just as I'd predicted, without the decoding key to my black box, all they saw was meaningless data. They could guess, but they couldn't provide Morgan with a convincing explanation backed by solid evidence. I passed by Chloe. She looked hollow, slumped in her chair, staring blankly at her screen. The huge bouquet of celebratory flowers on her desk now looked like a massive joke. Gregory was still yelling at the technical director in the conference room, but I could no longer make out his words. As I walked past finance, Donna discreetly gave me a thumbs up, a look of approval in her eyes. I smiled back, hugged my box tighter, and walked out of the place where I'd spent 5 years of my youth in hard work, without looking back. The moment I stepped out of the building, the sunset was perfect. Golden light washed over me, warm and gentle. I took a deep breath of fresh air, and the heavy weight that had pressed on my chest for months finally lifted. I didn't go home. Instead, I went straight to the new company that had offered me the job. I handed in the signed contract, and HR warmly welcomed me, telling me I could start onboarding next Monday. Everything fit together seamlessly, just as I'd planned. That night, I cooked myself a lavish dinner. I opened a bottle of red wine and raised a glass to myself against the city lights outside the window. To my former foolishness and naivety, and to my current clarity and resolve, I wasn't someone who knew how to fight back by nature. It was reality, Gregory and Chloe cutting me down piece by piece that killed the good, obedient person inside me and forced me to grow armor. My phone had been ringing nonstop since I left the company, Gregory and Chloe taking turns calling. I didn't answer a single one. Eventually, I shut it off. Since I lit this fire myself, I intend to watch it burn, all the way to the end. About 2 weeks later, I had settled smoothly into my new job and started taking over a new, more challenging project. The atmosphere at the new company was great. Management valued my abilities, and the teamwork among colleagues was genuinely pleasant. One day, during lunch break, I got a call from Donna. Her voice on the other end sounded downright triumphant. "Shan, I've got some great news for you." "What good news?" I asked with a smile. "The glorious construction project, it's completely blown up. They didn't get a single cent of the final payment back. And Morgan even sent a lawyer's letter suing the company for commercial fraud." Donna's voice was brimming with vindicated excitement. I listened quietly. "And Chloe, she got fired by Gregory that very day. I heard she cried her eyes out when she left. She probably still doesn't even know what she did wrong." "What about Gregory?" I asked the question I cared about most. "Him?" Donna let out a laugh. "He's worse off. Because the company took such a huge loss, headquarters came down hard on him. His regional director position was stripped, he got demoted to an ordinary department manager, and he even has to personally shoulder part of the financial loss. Now he can't lift his head anywhere in the company. He's become a complete joke. I heard he's been running around lately, trying to figure out what that system was actually about, acting like he's lost his mind." I could picture Gregory perfectly, furious, humiliated, and utterly powerless. "Serves him right," I said softly. "Exactly," Donna replied. "Now everyone in the company talks about you like you're a legend, Saint Sean. Everyone knows what really happened, and they all think you handled it beautifully." After hanging up, I looked out at the bright sunlight beyond the window, feeling perfectly calm. There was no rush of vengeful joy, just a sense that everything had finally settled. I hadn't taken revenge. I had simply reclaimed the fairness and dignity that should have been mine all along. This world doesn't reward you just because you suffer quietly and give your all. Sometimes you have to bare your teeth, otherwise people will never realize you're not someone to be pushed around. I opened my contacts and found Gregory's name. I stared at the number, remembering all the empty promises he'd painted for me over the phone, the greasy smile he wore at the annual gala, and that last, almost pleading tone in his voice. Then I hit delete. As his name vanished completely from my phone, I felt as though I had finally severed ties with that ugly chapter of my past. A new life was only just beginning, and ahead of me lay a much wider world.